Shaykh Omar has 2 bachelor degrees, one in accounting and one in Islamic studies. He also has a master's degree in Islamic finance and is currently pursuing his doctorate degree in Islamic history. He previously served as Imam for Masjid Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in New Orleans for 6 years and taught at Michigan University. After Hurricane Katrina, he served as field coordinator for IQA relief. The mayor and the city council of New Orleans awarded him with outstanding civic achievement. He co-founded the East Jefferson Interfaith Council and is now a member of IANT Sharia Council. He also currently serves as a director of Islamic Learning Foundation in Texas and an instructor for Al-Maghrib Institute. Please help me welcome Shaykh Omar Suleiman.
I'm going to hold this because I'm going to assume that this is too short. So. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والعاقبة للمتقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. To everyone that is here, adoring parents, adored children and graduates, to our dear Imam and founding members of this wonderful project. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. Now, I have to admit that when you guys were up on stage, you were the sulkiest graduates I've ever seen in my life. And that was the weakest ahad I've ever seen in my life. So I think you need Sheikh Yusuf, maybe you can redo it with them, inshallah ta'ala, privately. Afterwards, make sure they do it with some heart, inshallah. But alhamdulillah, now I can see the joy. And, I just want to give you a few words. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, describing to us that beautiful dua that Zakaria alayhi salam made as a man in his 90s, not having been blessed with children up until that point, requesting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a child. When he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a son, and against all odds and all circumstances as he stood there, but counting upon what Maryam alayhi salam said to him, Inna Allah yarzuqu man yasha' bighayri hisab, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives without any limits, without any account. When he stood there and he made that dua, he could have just asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a son. He could have just asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a child, but he instead went on asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for certain characteristics of that child. And he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ وَاجْعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. Let him inherit from me and inherit from the family of Ya'qub, and make him, O Allah, pleasing. And subhanAllah, the inheritance that he's speaking about is not just an inheritance of money, because Zakaria alayhi salam, as Rasulullah described him, he was a najjar, he was a carpenter, and he used to eat from his everyday earnings from his hands. Meaning he was a day-to-day man in terms of his living and in terms of his means of income. So he wasn't talking about a child that will inherit this great fortune, but you know what he was talking about? He was talking about someone to inherit that prophethood, someone to inherit that knowledge, someone to pass on that message. And he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a very beautiful request outside of just ilm, because the ilm part can be taught, but there's something that's even more important than that, and that is وَجَعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. Make him pleasing to you, O Allah. Because at the end of the day, if a person has all the knowledge in the world, if a person is achieved or accomplished in every single aspect of life, but at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look to that person favorably, then it's all in loss. Now, Imam al-Qushayri rahimahullah, he says when Zakaria alayhi salam made that dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knew he only had a few moments. He knew he only had a few words to say to Allah azza wa jalla. And when he asks Allah, وَجَعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا, make him, O Allah, pleasing, that was the most comprehensive dua that you could possibly make for a person. Why? Because if a person is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the people will be pleased with him also. As Rasulullah says, Inna Allah ila ahabba abdan, verily when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves his servant, nada Jibreel, Allah calls upon Jibreel alayhi salam. And he says, Ya Jibreel, inni uhibbu fulan. I love this person. I mean, you're talking about a true graduation here. I love this person. فَأَحِبَّهُ. So you should love him too, Jibreel. فَيُحِبُّهُ Jibreel. So Jibreel alayhi salam loves him also. And Jibreel alayhi salam calls upon all of the inhabitants of the heavens. Can you imagine how many inhabitants of the heavens there are? And each and every single one of them hears this call from Jibreel alayhi salam. I mean, you talk about an audience, and you can go on and on about all the different narrations about how many angels there are. Just take Bayt al-Ma'mur alone, where 70,000 of them go every day and never come back. And Jibreel alayhi salam calls upon Ahl as-Sama, all of the inhabitants of the heavens, and says, Inna Allah yuhibbu fulan. Allah loves this person, so you should love him too. And so all of the inhabitants of the heavens love that person. And then Rasulullah said, and as for the people on this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places acceptance and love in the people's hearts for that person. And you know, subhanAllah, this dua being as comprehensive as it is, Zakaria alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in another narration explaining this, Man Allah bi sakhatin nas. Whoever pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but displeases people, meaning by gaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some people might not like the way that he pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that person, he's pleased with that person, and eventually people will come around. Eventually people will also come around to love and respect that person, because that's a person of principle, that's a person of purpose, that's a person that doesn't compromise, that's a person that stands for something solid. And Rasulullah says on the opposite end of that, Man Allah nasa bi sakhatillah, but whoever pleases the people by disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be displeased with that person, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause the people to not like that person either. And the idea here is that what you need to realize is that you're going to have interactions as being this very achieved, Muslim graduate. You're going to have interactions, and some people aren't going to like you when they first see you. And if you compromise, eventually they won't like you either. But if you hold strong to your deen and you continue on that purpose, you continue on that mission, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place acceptance in the hearts of the people around you. And I really want you to think about this. SubhanAllah, as I was sitting there watching all of you guys going from your baby pictures to, mashallah, your adult pictures, I couldn't help but get teary-eyed. And I said, man, I'm going to be bawling like a baby when my daughter graduates, inshallah, when my son graduates, because it's just amazing seeing that. This is truly an ayah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how much money, how much time, how many efforts have been put into making you awliya? How many people to form this school? How many imams? How many board members? How many community members? How much charity? How much of your parents' efforts went into just making you awliya, just making you pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All of that makes it worth it. When your parents see you donning your Islam proudly, memorizing the Quran, academically being achieved, I mean, mashallah, I must say, I was reading you guys' your achievements, not too shabby, mashallah, pretty good. It makes it all worth it to them. But the greater graduation is what they wanted you to get. They want you to be mentioned favorably by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just that thought, Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala anhu says in the hadith of Bukhari, that Rasulullah said to me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah amarani an aqra'a alayk lam yakun alladhina kafaru min ahli al-kitab ila akhir al-ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or ila akhir al-surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded me, Rasulullah speaking to Ubay ibn Ka'b, said, Allah has commanded me to read to you Surah Al-Bayyinah. And the first thoughts of Ubay, قال يا رسول الله سماني, he said, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, did Allah say my name? Did Allah really say my name? Like, did Allah say Ubay ibn Ka'b? He said, no, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said your name. And Ubay broke down into tears. Because just that thought that Allah was mentioning his name, was so profound to him. And that's what your parents live for. That's what the people around you live for. That's what the community members, that's what the founders of this wonderful institution live for. So that you and them and all of us, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, to be mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favorably. Because there is nothing more precious than that. And there is nothing more precious than when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you amongst those people to not only be a part of His deen, but to represent His deen. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to be on that bandwagon, allows you to be on that group, amongst that favored group of people that work for His deen, and you You are a da'iyah in your very nature. You know, when people see you, they're not going to say, what kind of Muslim are you? Or what are you this? But no, you look Muslim, you are Muslim, and you are responsible for everything that's happened in the world. And you have to prove to me why all of that stuff I've heard about Islam is not true. And you know how you prove that? With a smile, and by getting the highest grade in your class and carrying yourself with high etiquette and high khuluq and the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how you disprove all of that. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly to bless you all, to make you the coolest of your parents' eyes. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward everyone that